listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game. Hello everyone, how are you doing this evening? Just like Major League Soccer, we are starting a few minutes late. I think it's very fitting. No, hello everyone. Thanks so much for joining us in the chat today with YouTube. The social has gone out on Twitter and over on Discord, so if you would be so kind as to retweet and share that, it is always welcome. If you're joining us for the first time, I know we've had a few new follows since the last episode. If you're joining us for the first time tonight on YouTube, either at the live stream or watching it later on, thank you so much. Welcome. Hello. Please do like and subscribe. Do all those things that people on YouTube tell you to do to help with the metrics and yada yada. But yeah, no, go ahead, like and subscribe. If you are interested in fantasy MLS content, then I think we have a pretty good offering here. So do it, and you'll be able to stay abreast on all the crazy things that happen in this amazing league that we are all fans of. Let's see here. Yeah, I got 6 people in. I got the Discord stuff out there. Hello, Ron. Hello, William. Hello, Gene. Hello, Chandio. Charlie. Hello, everybody.
Our names are messed up.
I mean, I'm at the YouTube, so we're just giving just a second to see if anybody else comes on. Okay, people will come on as we go here. Excited we have Todd with us tonight, who I just see is listed as Ashley.
Yeah, that's what they were just saying. Our names are messed up.
Which
that happens often, I feel like. To me. Like, I feel like
so just a little fun thing thrown in there.
It's fine.
Ashley's on there twice. That's crazy.
That's right.
That's crazy. I can get
That's
that
the
fixed
full
up.
circle for all the times you accidentally left me out of play fix.
Let's see here. Get that sorted out before we. Let's see here. Todd Mod. There we go. For anybody who wants to follow Todd on Twitter. I don't know how active you are on Twitter, Todd, but.
Nope, nothing really posted there. But you can just follow for the hell of it. But.
There is. If you want to see some of that amazing content from Todd on Twitter, then there's his handle right there. All right, well, I think we have enough right there. We'll have some more notifications go out as the show goes on. Again, thank you everyone who does like and share the content. It does help us. And we're going to get started on another double game week prep chat right now. So, yeah, good times, great oldies, great soccer, crazy stuff. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of round 25 of the 2022 MLS Fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by 2 Heels, 1 Arena. No. Actually, brought to you by the amazing Patreon supporters of the MLS Fantasy Insider podcast. It's because of you that we're able to keep this project going, and I thank you so much every day. It's just a fun project and such a true joy and a blessing to be able to have you guys with us as we go along with this crazy fantasy ride. I'm your host, Reed Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partners in fantasy, Mr. Belaine Riffle and Ashley Savage. We'd also like to welcome our special guest, Todd Modisette, who is a 2018 champion of the overall MLS fantasy game and one of our Discord server's top members. How you doing tonight, Todd?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Thank you. How are you guys doing? Everybody else?
I'm great.
Yeah, doing really well.
Well, happy to have everybody who is with us in chat as well. A little bit low on the live chat numbers tonight. I get it. Double game weeks back to back, closing in on the final of the season. This is the usual late season kind of lag that we see with viewership and listenership. But what that means is those of you who are still with us and still listening, you're getting the tips that other people aren't. Well, unless they go to Discord and share them. But who knows? That's something you should all be doing anyway. But thank you so much for joining us. We're still going to do, as always, going and reviewing. And we're very happy Todd could be here. He was going to be with us last week, but had some daddy duty that he needed to take care of with his own little one, which I understand all too well. But we're super excited for you to be joining us, Todd. How's your team been doing this year?
I've been doing good before. I was in the top 10 for a while. Then the double game weeks have hit me hard. So I'll see what advice I can offer this week. But those of you should be move me down, then go back up on the single game weeks. So right now I'm 17. So not bad, but hopefully I can get a little higher.
No, not bad at all. Double game weeks are
highest
our
one here,
mistress.
Todd. Highest one here. So you're doing a good job.
No, super excited that you can join us tonight. And for those of you who aren't able to join during the live stream, Todd is wearing his orange right here, showing his Houston fandom right there. It's nice. We used to have Travis used to be a regular on the show, one of our co-hosts, and he was a Houston fan, and so it's nice to have some of, I guess, that shade of orange back on the show from time to time.
Yeah, not too many of us, so I have to represent a little bit.
Sure.
All right, well, let's get into talking about how our teams did this past week. Ashley, how'd you do?
Yeah, it turned out better than I thought it would. I got a 102. That Reynoso captain, like a lot of people, so I don't feel like, I'm in the minority there. Really got me. I had texted you guys about this. I tried to tinker in Gazdag, looking at lineups, and I didn't save it. Like, I did it, and then I thought, no, don't tinker, so I closed it out. Didn't have him, so that was a little frustrating for me. But I did something we always say not to do. I needed to bring in bench points, and so I made the decision. The players I had left to play were Heel, Mukhtar, Almada, and Lennon. And so I had to decide who to tinker out, which was that. Who would you choose? Without knowing how they did going into last week, who would you?
Probably would have done Lennon out of those.
Okay.
I would have dumped Heel because that's just how I'm playing this year.
Okay, Reed.
Heel.
Okay, I made the obscene choice to choose Mukhtar, who got 10 points, but hear me out. This is what I was happy about myself. He was the tied for best tinker out because Almada got 10, Lennon got 11, Heel got 11. So by the numbers, he was the best one to tinker out. So that was my only real joy to this week was I chose the numerically right person to tinker out. But yeah, 102, can't complain, but didn't really do too much for me moving up or down.
Blaine.
Yeah, I'm on a 108. That was good enough to finish off the Champions League qualifier. I finished, I think, 26th on that. So I am in. Went with a few of the differentials that paid off okay, I guess. I mean, I had Gazdag. I know he was in and out of a lot of lineups. I know I had him plugged last week, but we always talked about how long can they sustain this? How long can he sustain it? Because he was so slow. But right now he's going, and he was kind of one of those trip-up differentials that a lot of people had. He shouldn't have been a differential, but he was in that. Lennon was definitely a differential who paid off big for me this week. And then I stuck with Carranza over Blake, which was an extra point. Probably not the greatest move for me this week. And then I screwed up. I should have done better, but I took Heel out. That's why I could honestly say Heel would be my drop. I took him out for Zella and lost a few points right there. Had the Ray captain as well. So, I mean, I missed the mark on a few things, but still ended up with a 108. If you broke 100, I think you were doing great this week. It's enough to see you stay put in the rankings or move up just a little bit. So overall, not a bad week, but I'm just happy I'm in Champions League at this point.
Todd.
Scored 111 last week, so moved up some ranks. I had a good week, but it was really weird because I moved up even though I captained the very lowest scoring player on my team in Reynoso. Yeah. And the last move I made was switching out Gazdag to switch to triple Philly defense instead. And they had a clean sheet, but obviously losing out on 3 goals hurts.
Yeah.
So it was a good week with lots of high-scoring players, but I actually left some on the table even with that. But that's how it goes.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag for me as well. I ended up with only 96. I had Zella and Acosta right there, and some of my forward options didn't pay off. I didn't have Gazdag because I originally was going with Blake, Wagner, and Glesnes, and I ended up changing that up and ended up only with those 2 Philly players. But that's why I didn't have him originally and didn't add him back in, even with all that discussion and seeing that Colorado lineup. But also had the Reynoso captain, so it was fine. I mean, I had a lot of the players that ended up being fairly chalky. It's just I had missed a couple here or there, and not having Gazdag this week was what killed a lot of people. That's like I said, I retweeted at MLS Fantasies post highlighting the winning team, and that's a lot of what it came down to. Is if you had Gazdag and captained him, you had the money this week, and so much of it came down to just picking that right player. And I think, as we were Ashley alluded to, looking at those lineups made a lot of difference. Seeing that Colorado lineup, seeing all those defensive players, those starters on the bench right there, that was definitely a big hint. And there's tinkering. It helps and it can hurt. It's also a fickle mistress. So that's just where it comes in. You just got to know when to do it. And that's probably my takeaway this because you just have to know when to make that
the
tinker.
fine line between a tinker, which is a negative term, right? A tinker and a roster adjacent choice. What would we will come up with something better. But
some sort of
it's a tough line. Tough line.
Yeah, it's a difficult. As for me, I'm chalking this down as just having a poor year in general. I'm in the top 300, but that's not usually where I target to be. So that's I know a lot of people, maybe that's a fantastic. I know I'd like to at least be in that top 100, 200 maybe, but yeah, so 300, kind of a rough year for me. But you know what is. I did not make the Champions League, so I'm happy though to live vicariously through all of you who did, and so
You're still the host.
You are. I am still the host.
You know,
that's right. I'm still the host. So there we go. Let's talk about our takeaways from this past round. Our takearoos, if you will. Blaine, what about you?
Yeah, this is a simple one for me. It's just watch the hotness right now. It's at that point of the season where I feel like we know what's going on. We know what teams are doing outside of injuries. And we kind of have a feel for how everybody's playing, and we know what to expect from most of these guys. Philly's come on super strong lately, but they've been so hot. They're where New York City was right after they got done with Champions League, putting up 4 or 5 goals a game. Everybody looks good. Go with those guys that you know are putting up scores. It happened again this last week. We went to our go-to names, and they got us decent points. I mean, Reynoso didn't quite hit, but a lot of people had him. I think somebody in Discord looked it up, and 22 of the top 25 players had a Reynoso captain. So 22 of the top 25 scores in the game, Captain Reynoso. If you did that, you went with the majority of experienced players at the top of the list. If you went with the differential, great, you probably did a whole lot better, or you went with Zella, who got the exact same, and whatever. I mean, it's one of those things, but we kind of know who's doing what right now, and just stick with that, because you'll end up doing more damage to your team unless you're really trying to make up ground or need to make some big moves to hit your goals. I know Reed likes to be top 200. I usually shoot for top 200 as well. Top 100 is always my goal, but if I'm in the top 200 at the end of the season, I'm happy, because this is a tough crowd at the top. Top 200, 250 is a tough ask any given year, unless you're one of those players like Todd, who's a former champion and whatnot, who just seems to consistently stay top 25. But I mean, for a lot of us more average players, top 250, top 200 is a great score. So just go with what you know and keep going with the guys that are hot right now, because it's the time of the season where the hot players are trying to make playoffs, trying to solidify their spot in the standings. The Shield isn't locked up quite yet, but as soon as you see stuff, or you see the teams that are fighting for it, expect them to keep making the push and just go with who's hot.
Todd.
I mean, the Philly beatdown was the biggest thing that jumps out. Is just their goal differential is now a lot higher than anyone else. They're putting multiple beatdowns on people, so you have to load up on them, especially for any home game. But I was actually really impressed by Austin. I thought it was going to be a good game versus LAFC. I did not expect them to win big, and I sort of doubted them a lot this season, but they've consistently come through. So they've earned the respect that they have so far. And also just seeing that Toronto their new players are doing well, and that they're getting goals now, and they're actually improved on defense too, which was they were awful, like almost the whole
Toronto
season.
turnaround.
So that's making them a big factor as we close the season now.
Yeah, I think Matt Doyle put it really well in his article about Austin, is that this was their marquee win. Like, they'd been doing well and scoring, and DeRussi's leading the Golden Boot, but they hadn't really had a marquee win. Which, when he said that and I read it, I kind of looked back and I was like, no, surely not. But he's right. Like, there wasn't like a big team that they just dominated, and they dominated LA in this last game. Just looking at the highlight reel, so. Good for them. That's great. The goals kind of got mixed around. There's some good options there, fantasy wise. So it's good. All right. So sorry, Todd. That's a Texas thing. So. There we go. Ashley.
Yeah. Just some great red cards this week. I really enjoyed with a couple good red cards going into a double game week. And then maybe I'm wrong, but I'm really noticing how the playoff push is affecting the play of some of these teams. And I think when it gets to this time of the year, we start to see a little bit of that, right? We had talked, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, about, LAFC might start resting people, but after that beatdown, I don't think that they will. You're seeing such a tight gap in both conferences between below and above the line, and I think stuff, that aspect of, obviously everybody always wants to win. But this kind of final playoff pushes, you're going to see some, possible flip-flopping between the teams below and above the line is definitely, I think, going to impact fantasy a little bit more.
Yeah, I know we were just mentioning it last week, talking about some of the playoff predictions, and I like to go over to 538.com to look at their stuff. You can check it out if you're in live chat with us. I just posted it in chat if you want to check it out. I just think it's a nice graphic, kind of giving you the playoff chances of who's going to make it and who's essentially out of it. The only one who's clinched it is LAFC, but a lot of teams are 99-98%, and a few teams are less than 1% chance of making playoffs. So you can kind of see where people are going to fall right there. But it's a great little graphic if you want to start to have just sort of idea of maybe which teams you might want to keep an eye on a little bit more than usual, including a team like Philly, we've talked about, or a team like Montreal, which has also done pretty well in this latter part of the year with some good fantasy picks. So there's options there. It's a way to keep yourself in the know. That was part of my take is also, yes, keep an eye on the playoff standings. Teams will absolutely start adjusting for that, especially if they have chances for getting a wild card or having the home field advantage, something like that. So they're going to be looking at all of that. And and just keep an eye on those lineups. We saw that so much with this Colorado team this week in Philadelphia. And as we were talking about a second ago, there is that fine line between like just unnecessary tinkering and making informed decisions, informed changes to your team. And that's your own line. It's hard. We can tell you some general ideas, but I mean, when you see 2 or 3 starting defenders on the bench, that's a good sign that maybe a tinker is justified with some good value. But yeah, just keep an eye on all those things coming to the end of the year. This is a double game week that we have coming up, so we're going to have games starting really soon, and we're going to have a lot of double game week players to go through, so stay tuned. We're going to be talking about our housekeeping section coming right up. We are, Loxley. We're going to be talking about that. That's what it is. That's right. We're getting through this. Okay. Social. Okay, it's time to talk housekeeping for round 25. This is a big double game week coming up, but first, a quick shout out to those leaders in our head-to-head league. So we have first the MLS Fantasy Insider Experts Invitational. Still on top is Donuts with a record of 18-2-4, a solid lead right there. And so with just a few rounds left, it's not impossible, but this is Donuts to lose, I think, at this point. Going over to the Pro Rel League, also expanding his lead, Patrick Smith in our Champions League with a record of 18-1-5. A little bit closer. There's still some rounds where that could change up, but Patrick's been up there for, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 weeks now. He's been up there before, back and forth several times in the Champions League, so it is not over at all, but Patrick is still on top. What about the Veterans League, Ashley?
Yeah, I said this off air. I'm happy to also share. Thanks to beating me, throwing in the cow, moved back into first place in our Veterans League at 17-0-7. So I lost to them by 6. Happy to take one for the first place team. So throwing in the cow, coming back on top.
Love that name. What about the Development League, Blaine?
Yeah, McBean All-Stars has stayed 5 points clear. With 5 weeks left, this is getting really tight. But 5 points clear means he's got 1 to give up. I don't know if he's going to drop 2 in the final 5. He's playing really well right now.
Probably going to be in the Veterans League next year. Going down to the Pro Rel wait list, we have Wawa Weewa still on top with a record of 21-0-3. Another player who will likely be in our renamed Development League next year. That's going to happen for sure. Putting skills to test up at that level. But yeah, thanks so much everybody who's playing in these Pro Rels. It's such a blast. I'm glad you've liked it, and we're going to be doing what we can to keep that going for the next round. Okay, let's get into the actual nitty-gritty details for round 25. It starts Wednesday, August 31st. So if you're listening to us tonight on Monday, then that's a couple of days. You've got some buffer there. If you're listening to us with hope tomorrow on Tuesday when this podcast goes live, then it's tomorrow. So be ready. And this is not your little a couple teams play, get a little break kind of double game week. No, the game week starts Wednesday, August 31st. At 7 o'clock p.m. with Philadelphia versus Atlanta. But then 30 minutes later, a whole bunch more teams kick off. And then a little bit after that, a whole bunch more teams kick off. There's a bunch. There's a bunch of games on Wednesday. There's a bunch of games this week. Almost everybody is on a double game week. So this is a big one. You're going to want to have your team set by Wednesday. You might have some room to have some switcheroos going on with some of the teams, depending on who you're gonna roll with. If you have someone from San Jose or Vancouver, that's gonna give you the time to preview a lot of the double game week players. But I don't know why you'd want to do that because there's really only one team that plays. But this is not a round where I'm going to be recommending a lot of tinkering with your team. It's probably going to be auto-roos, just like picking your players, having some of those scrubs there, and just letting the chips fall where they may. But yeah, a lot of teams on double games. For those who are on a double home game week, 2 home games, we have Columbus, New England, Toronto, and Nashville. And then for those on a double away game, it's Atlanta, Chicago, and Colorado. And don't forget, several of these teams played in the second half of last round, so be on the lookout for roster rotations as well. It's going to be very important. No teams are on a bye, and several teams are on single game weeks. If you're looking for the teams that play the latest, that would be, as I said, San Jose and Vancouver. They play on Sunday. They're the second to last game of the entire round, so if you are looking for scrubs or whatever, that's an option right there. There are definitely some players who are not regulars who can be put into your team. But you can also check out the Mega Reference to find out some players who will not play at all because they're not even in the game anymore. So, well, in the actual game, they're in our digital game. But you can check that out with the Mega Reference right there. But that's your general lineup for this big double game week as we're going into the final stretch of the season. However, as always, with the Mega Reference, we're going to touch on those injuries and cards and all sorts of great stuff that everybody, the community effort works so hard, especially Tyler gets that worked up for us, and Blaine has the privilege of reading off to us each week. Blaine.
Yeah, some good news to start off as always. Cervania came back for FC Dallas after 3 weeks on injury. That's a big addition to that team. He's been starting most of the season in midfield. Makes the team infinitely better across the board. Just a lot more cohesive there. And then Gustavo Bo got 45 minutes in the second half for New England. If he's ready to start for the double game week, I think that changes up how a lot of us are going to handle the week.
So keep an eye on him starting, but it's good news to have him back. Great news for Heel to have Bo back in the lineup. Ashley kind of hinted at earlier, there were 5 red cards this week. It was crazy. Pazuello did a flying kick that will probably get him extra games.
Dude. It did look accidental, but man, was it brutal.
Yeah, probably getting extra games. The only reason he may not is because he was tracking the ball the whole way, and it was just poor judgment rather than malicious. But still, Kyle Duncan for Red Bulls, Valencia for Colorado got one, Kone for Montreal, and then Cavallini picked up one for Vancouver.
I don't think he will play the rest of this year. That was one of the worst red cards I have ever seen in MLS.
For those that don't know, he head stomped a guy. He should not play for the rest of the season.
It was Alex Mule, and he looked right at him and then jumped and stomped onto his face.
Yeah,
it was brutal.
Should be done. The way he's playing in Vancouver, I don't know that he'll be back next year. Like, this could be last game in MLS as far as I'm concerned, and I would not be sad about that.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah. And then Tolkien for Red Bulls and Steres for Houston are going to be out on yellow card accumulation. Loxley does not like hearing that, but that's 2 Red Bull defenders out the first game for suspension, so keep those going. Injuries, Taxi picked up a head injury for DC. Debasi ruptured a quad tendon. He's probably done for the regular season.
Oh, he's done.
Yeah. Luquinhas for Red Bulls, back pains and listed as a game time decision. Danny Wilson picked up a leg injury for Colorado. Higuain took cleats to the calf, so don't know how long he's going to be out, but that could be nothing, or it could be something more serious. Aaron Long for Red Bulls has a heel injury. Shaqiri's got a quad injury again, and She-Host for Chicago has also got a hamstring injury. So they're
on also.
That he's not on the list. Roldan's
no
out
one cares.
6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, he's done for the regular season. So
he's not. They did not say that, and neither will you.
6 to 8 weeks. That's regular season.
They didn't say it was going to be 6 to 8 weeks.
That's what we're hearing.
No, who's we? I'm hearing different, and I'm the Seattle person, Wayne.
Okay, and then the really interesting one, the one that everybody really cares about, is our notable yellow card watch. If they pick up a yellow in the first game, they would miss the second game. It's a lot of midfielders this week. Ladero, Driussi, Reynoso, Fragapane, and Kellen Acosta for LAFC. Those are the mids on it. And then Chanot for New York City on the defensive side. So I know we're going to be talking about midfielders. There's 4 names that could pop up in the double game week midfielder section that are on yellow card watch.
Yeah.
And thank you, Discord, for getting that together for us today. I know Ranch always puts this together, but Discord's invaluable in getting this done every week. So thank you to everybody who contributes to this list.
And if you too want to play a role in contributing to the Mega Reference, the easiest way to do that is become a member of the Discord community by heading over to mlsfantasyboss.com/Discord. The link is right there. It's free. It's fun. It's a blast. I mean, all of us hang out there, and so it's all kinds of. I mean, you can speak to that, can't you, Todd? It's a good place.
Oh yeah, that's great advice for anyone who wants to learn more and get good help, especially when it gets close to game time.
Yeah, and it's such very good spirited people who are always there to provide just honest advice. So highly recommend. If by this time of the year you haven't gone there, do, and if you're new, then yeah, check it out. It's a lot of fun. But what I know many people have come for, we are going to talk about our player targets for double game week round 25 right up next. Social, yeah, making real good time. Real good time. Hey, everybody. Yeah, I've got the social out again. This might be another one to retweet if you already have. I know this is where we usually see the viewership numbers pop up a little bit here. All right, let's talk about player recommendations for double game week, round 25, starting as always with keepers and defenders. The majority of us, majority except for Blaine, are
I'll
looking
talk
at.
about this. I have a comment on this.
I assumed
No,
I
you have a comment?
assumed you would. But the majority of people are looking at room in some capacity for their keeper strategy this week. And then when it comes to defenders, everyone's looking at Wagner. Everyone is looking at Palacios except for Blaine. And everyone's looking at a Nashville defender, again, except for Blaine. So Blaine's got a lot of explaining to do, but we're going to let Ashley go first. So, Ashley.
Thank you so much. I like room. I've thought about Blake. I might kind of come down to what that first game looks like. But the thing about double game week when it's structured like this is there's not a real backup that I see this year. There's not a real keeperoo situation. If you take sorry, now I'm pulling up the schedule. If you take the Philly game, let's say, which is the 4:00 kickoff, I'm going to talk in my time because it's less math. If you take the Philly game, that's the 4:00 kickoff. The only games that start after that game would finish is Austin and Portland and Salt Lake and Minnesota. And there's no way I'm taking a single game week keeper this week because San Jose and Vancouver are garbage, like equal garbage. So that game should be a nightmare. So for me, there's no one to really keeper to. So it's just going to depend on how I feel about those two lineups. But I'm leaning towards room, but always going to consider Blake in double game weeks like this. But the double home for Columbus, I think, is what's kind of helping tip me that way. I like Wagner. I just feel like I say this a lot, but he's fixture proof for me at this point. I mean, there's not a lot of teams home or away, especially on a double that I wouldn't take him in. It seems as though even, when he misses a shutout, he gets an assist or something, right? He's just I don't know that we've seen a wing back in the, in fantasy like him before. There's been some good ones.
Blaine talking about Hollingshead again.
Oh yeah, sorry. I should know better than to say that. But Kai Wagner's just fixture proof for me. I like Palacios. I'm leaning towards Romney as my Nashville player. I think if some people are going to say, what about Maher? He got 26 points. Was lightning in a bottle? I'm not chasing after that. If you do it, great. I'm probably not. I'm leaning towards Romney just with how his point production has been. And then I keep going back and forth between a Columbus defender, Brooks Lennon, who has 2 road games, so I'm not too sure that that's where I'll land, or a second Philly defender, which I know a lot of people have come to have as like a staple as their bench defender. It's just a second Philadelphia defender, hoping for that shutout or bonus points. So my staples for sure are Wagner, Palacios, Romney, and then that last spot for me is floating around between a couple names.
Blaine.
Yeah, so I'm not on the room bandwagon, and actually I'm going to go ahead and steal a little bit. Ryan gave us a preview of his lineup IQ stuff. LAFC actually has the best chance at a double clean sheet this week and has the highest single clean sheet chances of any team according to his stats. And I was already looking at 2 keepers, just kind of depending. Throw one in my lineup, throw one on the bench for potential price rise. Not that I need the money, but just it's nice to keep building it for the fun of it. And that was between Sean Johnson and Crepeau as my keepers. They start at the same time. I can't do a keeperoo. I'm not planning on doing a keeperoo. But seeing this, and we missed one in the injury update. Thiago Martins for New York City also came off with an injury. So that's Chanot Chanot on yellow card watch and Martins on an injury. And that's before Callens comes back. So we'll have to kind of see what's going on with New York City's defense. But their defense has been good this season, so I don't mind Sean Johnson. But I think Crepeau's going to slip in there as my top keeper for the week, ahead of Room. I understand why people would want to go Room, but Crepeau's been playing well, and LAFC has been doing better than I had thought they would through this part. Wagner's an instant include. I'm looking at one of the New York City defenders, and then I'm thinking about going right back to Lennon for the double. His offensive numbers are there. I don't think the matchups are so out of line that you can't consider slotting him in. I know there's Philly in the first one, but that Portland game's not bad.
It's a double road though, right? Like that's what
Yeah,
makes
it is a
kinda
double
tricky.
road. It's the offensive potential there. I mean, he picked up 2 assists in the last game. He is getting involved. It's one of those that he'll probably become somebody like Palacios, somebody on LAFC before the round starts. But I think we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't highlight some of the other names. We can't all have the same people all the time.
I said 1 and 2.
Yeah.
True. That's true. You did. Todd, who are you looking at?
Yeah, so I picked Room as the keeper. Just Columbus has really good matchups on a double home game, and I didn't like their other defenders, so I thought that was the best way to get Columbus defense. And I think I will keep St. Clair in there as an emergency backup keeper in case Room has an injury, or if he looks like he has like 1 point, you would actually get to see his full game right before Minnesota starts. So that would give a potential chance at a double keeper if it all just completely fell apart for Room in the first game. So I think that gives a little bit of a backup option if it's a complete failure. And then at defense, yeah, Wagner's a lock. I saw actually the number 1 team overall capped him last week, which was a cool, bold choice that paid off. So, I mean, he's just unstoppable. Right now, I'm planning on doing Elliott to double up on the Philly defense, Palacios to get the LAFC defense. And then I'm deciding between 2 of the double home game defenders between Romney on Nashville and Cristito on Toronto, who gets a lot of bonus points and plays in the attack. So even though Toronto's defense is improving but not amazing, I think just his bonus points and offense can get you some points there.
Yeah, I think you guys have covered a lot of the ones. I was looking at Room mostly because of that double game week. I was also looking at Blake potentially, even with that split game. Hearing that about LAFC, I'll definitely have that as something to toss around. I am definitely going to be having a single keeper this week. I'm not doing the keeperoo. With the double, it just doesn't make sense, I don't think. I think the amount of money you play into that for the little bit of difference that you're going to get from a keeper, unless there's something crazy like penalty stops and ridiculousness like that, I just don't think it's worth the money on a double game week. So I'm definitely going to be running a single keeper and scrubbing out for the other one. For defenders, you guys have mentioned a lot of the big ones. I'm still on the fence about Nashville. It will probably just come down to the budget that I want to have. Currently, I'm scrubbing 2 defenders, and so I'm just planning on running 3 and putting some more money into the attacking players. Could potentially switch if I decide to scrub a forward, but that's what I'm looking at. Other ones you could consider if you're going to be running with Colorado goalkeeper and you want to double up. I know a lot of people like that. You're probably going to Mensah is a good. He can get some of the bonus points. They haven't been fantastic this year, so I think Todd's in the right headspace. If you just want to buy into the defense, then Room's an option, but you could always throw one of those guys on your bench. You could even double up with having a double Philly, double LAFC with one of those guys on the bench if you feel like trying to even triple up there in the back. You would have a harder time doing that likely with Philly if you wanted to triple up with 2 in the defense and have a keeper, but probably easier this round maybe for LAFC. People are going. Also, New England, I think buys another one people have been. I've seen in chat people could consider this week. They have that game against Chicago and against New York City, so definitely someone who is in the running as potential. Let's move on to. Do you have something to add?
I wanted to add. There was a discussion topic that came up on Discord that I think we should share with the community here.
Sure.
And that was, and I see you and Ashley have them on your list, and I don't. And Ashley and I both have the potential for a second Philly defender. It was pointed out to me this morning, and it's one of those changes I made last week, seeing how things were going, and that's moving away from Blake at this time. I know we love Philly. Philly's one of the best defenses out there for the season, but that position of goalkeeper has not been your heavy hitter for Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Back before they were scoring, it was an easy way to double up on defense without throwing everything in if they lose the clean sheet, whatever. But Blake's ceiling right now is about 8 points. The way the defense is playing, he picks up the clean sheet, his minutes, and maybe a bonus point. He got a 7 in the last game versus Colorado. He got an 8 the week before. It's It's not great when you consider Glesnes is popping off for a 10 or a 12. Wagner's a lock in your team. Elliott's getting a few bonus points every week. If you're going to triple up on Philly like you should, it's Wagner, Gazdag, plus somebody else, but it shouldn't be Blake. And I'm going to say that clearly. If you want a second defender, which I know Ashley and I both have that in the rundown as a potential, if things go the way I want to, if I end up not going with Carranza, I know I'm previewing other sections. It's like there's an easy slot to put in a second defender here. And you're looking at on this week, if they're averaging, say they only get the 1 clean sheet plus their bonus points, you're still looking at coming out with almost a 2 clean sheet score from a guy like Glesnes or a guy like Elliott who's popping in the bonus points. And Wagner, you just expect he's going to get 15, 20 points this round anyway with the way they play. But I want to urge the community to look away from Blake at this point and look at a second defender if you want Blake. Grab a different keeper. We've dropped some other good names. Room is a great name to throw in. Dump Blake. Pick a second Philly defender if you've only got one attacking player from Philly in your lineup. Do not take Blake. I think it's the biggest trap you can make because Blake, outside of a penalty save, has not hit double digits twice this year. He's got it once early in the season where he picked up enough saves and bonus points to get to that 10. And then he's got another one at 14 with a penalty save. Other than that, he's not hit double digits. I expect the defenders to hit double digits at least one of these 2 games this week.
I think you're exactly right. If that's where if you want to have 3 Philly players, then it's definitely 2 defenders and a midfielder. That's what you're going to look at right there. Yeah, Blake is the first one out in a scenario like that. I'd agree as well.
Yeah.
So
it's a trap, and I think a lot of people are still falling for it. And I think we've got to tell people like it's a trap. Don't do it.
Yeah, and he's factored into my keeper room most of the time this year. I don't know if he's ever been my single keeper. He's always been part of a keeper room because of that. But that's a very good point. So let's move on to our midfielders. Majority, we're all really close. So this is basically going to be a chalk section. It may be worth just mentioning some of the fringe players. But everyone is looking at least Mukhtar, Zelarayan, and Gazdag. And then after that, Heel and Ray are either in our teams or are people who we are considering for final spots within our team. So essentially, that's what we're looking at. I'll let you start out, Blaine, with some of your reasons why, and then maybe we all should just focus on some of those fringe players that we're looking at or some other spots that are very, very challenging for our decision. Blaine.
Yeah, to quickly recap what we've got, I mean, you've got Zella and Mook, who are 2 of the better midfielders in the game, on double home this week, and that really locks them into most lineups. Double home is so powerful, and then we've talked about Philly enough, but Gazdag doing what he's doing in the midfield, clicking on all cylinders with this team. He's finally the 10 they brought him in to be. It's like he's going to be in everybody's lineup for that. After that, we get to some really interesting picks. Driussi and Ray are high on everybody's list. Ray's coming off of a down week. Should have had a goal. They called it an own goal and gave him an extra point for it, but that was on target, just deflected. Whatever. I can live with it. But Ray's got a good setup. Driussi's got a good setup. And then Heel's another one that's always going to be there. And that double home is so tempting. And again, I tinkered him out last week. He's still doing stuff. If Bo is starting, I think Heel's got to be in my lineup. I was kind of on the fence coming into the show, but I know that Bo News, just reading it in the report, just kind of solidifies that Heel is probably going to be in my lineup. And then I'm thinking because of yellow card warnings, I may go to a guy who's safe to start too. He just served his suspension, so he's not going to be out barring a crazy red card, which is in his nature. But I'm looking at going to Santi Rodriguez for New York City. I love
you some Santi. You love it.
I do. It's the Philly thing all over again. They've been one of the hot offenses all season long. They can get the job done. And he's been playing the 10. Maxi rotates. He'll play the 10 one game. It's going to come down to that first lineup. If he's on the wing for that first one, I may consider something else, going with Driussi instead. Who knows? Maybe it's Fagundes instead of Driussi because Driussi's on the yellow card warning. Who knows? And Fagundes sometimes just pops off for more than Driussi, which always infuriates me. But if Santi's the 10 against DC, I think he's a lock to put into the lineup. That second game against New England is still a tasty matchup. New England has not been a great defense this year. They have been leaking goals. And the way New York City plays, they're still one of the best offenses in the league. Even without Tati, they're getting work done. I wish they would start Abear because that makes that offense even more potent. But I like Santi as the 10. He's been one of the better 10s in the league this year, and so I kind of got to go back to him on this double, especially with the first one being at home against DC. But that's kind of where I'm at, and those are the names I've seen pop up on Discord all day as people have been talking about it. There's a few others that may get thrown in, but really we're looking at a few, and then we got those yellow card warnings. And do you want to try to fight through it and hope for a monster game from somebody who doesn't pick up a yellow in the first leg?
Todd.
Yeah. So just overall this week, I was looking. I'm not sure I've remember like a double game week where so many of the very best fantasy players had amazing matchups than like in double game weeks. So this is a very hard week to go beyond chalk too much, just because if you pass up some of the best players in good matchups, you're going to really take a hit. I mean, Mukhtar, Zelarayan, and Heel are the 3 highest scoring players in fantasy, and they all have double home games this week. I really can't see how you can pass up any of those 3. And then Gazdag just had a monster game. He's had other great games recently. He's on a hot streak. So those 4 were locked. And I'm really struggling with the 5th midfielder. Because actually, I hadn't heard Lodero was on the yellow card. My 3 top choices were going to be Reynoso, Driussi, and Lodero. And all of them are on yellow card warning. So it's going to come down to if I feel like gambling. Because I don't like doing midfielders on the bench. But if you play them, then it might be the smart way. Just because this is going to be a very high-scoring week. And if you end up playing someone who gets a yellow card the first game, being stuck with a one-game player could really hurt you this week. So if you do that, you really may want to put them on the bench. So the Santi Rodriguez might be a really good call as a safe 5th mid who doesn't have a yellow card to watch. But I definitely would watch out for the. I mean, Reynoso, Driussi, and Lodero, all great players. I think they'll do well if they play both games. But if they do get a yellow card that first game, you could suffer a lot.
Ashley.
Yeah, I'll just repeat the emphasis of Gazdag, Mukhtar, Heel. That was the first 4 things I think I did making my team this week. And then I actually am looking at Maxi for NYCFC as a possible over Santi Rodriguez. I also, Driussi and Reynoso were 2 of the first that I thought of. The yellow card watch is what shies me away from it. I hate putting a midfielder on the bench. I just do, but I'm gonna agree with Todd where if you want Reynoso or Driussi, 2 players who it's not totally out of the realm of possibility, right? Like they can both get a little ticky tacky. I could see them getting a yellow. I think if you go with either of them, that might be a bench play. But that's hard for me to do. And then I saw this in chat and I was going to bring it up. It's not somebody that I think I'm going to throw onto my team. But Puig for LA Galaxy had his first real game. I know that Galaxy looked fantastic against a struggling Revolution team. So I don't know if maybe this was kind of a rare look. He picked up 7 with an assist, which is definitely not bad for a player's first real game. I know he came in as a sub at home the week before, but he passed the eye test for me big time. Spencer and I were watching that game together, and at some point in the second half, he was like, how many points does he have right now? Like 10, 11? And I looked, and he didn't, but he sure played like he would. So LA has 2 decent matchups this week, 1 on the road, 1 away. So if you're looking for something differential, I think he would be a pretty fun shout. I think he'll be fun next season. I don't know that there's enough of this season left for him to make too much of a dent in our fantasy lineups. And then the only other player I just want to touch on is Jordy Mihalovic. He's someone that pre-injury we talked really highly of. I think a lot of people are going to be drawn to Montreal with that Red Bull injured back line, at least for that first game. But I'm here to tell you, please don't do it. Please don't don't fall into the trap of the name, right? We've talked about this a little bit this year too. Like, the name means more than their current streaker points, right? You go and you look at Mihalovic's points after injury, they're not very good. He is very good, but his point production has not been. I don't know if there's anywhere else that's better to turn for Montreal if that's something that I know, like I said, people are paying attention to, but I don't think in that midfield, home against a battered Red Bull back line and then away to Toronto, which is going to be probably a goal fest if I were to assume those Canadian games usually are. I'm just here to pitch to not fall victim to a name that used to be a lock, 6-7 weeks ago.
Well, to add to that, Mihalovic got his contract. He's leaving at the end of the season. What does he have to play for here in MLS?
I like to think he'll still try playing.
Oh, he'll still try. But come playoff time, I think he'll be a little more into it again. But
they're second in the East. Like, they're going to play. I forget that every time.
Yeah, he's not going to turn it on until playoff time. He doesn't want to risk injury. He doesn't want to risk that big contract he just got to go overseas. He's coasting out. This is his victory lap with Montreal. And come playoff time, we'll see him do more. But I don't expect a ton from him. Meljic, whatever, is the other guy who's kind of been stepping up in his absence.
Yeah.
I'm maybe taking a penalty for him too. I just don't know where that goes. He would be the next guy up that I would probably look at in that midfield since you didn't have an answer for that. But that's just tough. That's a tough sell to take a second mid on a team like that.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. I think you guys have covered everything. I see in chat we have Michael Bradley's name mentioned. As always, double game weeks, you can look at those defensive midfielders. I know whenever, I guess, that Toronto's first DGW came around, Bradley got a goal. Not his usual right there, but I think a lot of the offensive midfielders are having some fantastic matchups. So while I will not put it anywhere out of the stretch of reality that a defensive midfielder could have a fantastic score and be challenging some of these, if enough of these offensive players go off, I just don't see a D mid really being up there.
Now Bradley's going to get a goal and 2 assists this week like he does.
Of course. Let's move on to forwards now, and we have a couple of legitimate majority opinions. Everyone's looking at Insigne and Cucho as the backbone of their forward lineup. Todd, what do you have to say?
Yeah, so I have a sort of a near 4-way tie. Whoever I leave out, I'm going to be just hiding my eyes, waiting for them to be the one who goes off. So I have Insigne, I have Cucho, and then I have Bernardeschi to double up on Toronto, and then Arango as like an LAFC option who puts in tons of goals. And all 4 of these guys put in tons of shots every single week. I think I was looking at their game scores. They almost always hit at least 4 shots, which is actually pretty hard to do consistently as a forward, but all these guys do it. And they all have good matchups. So I think any of them are going to be good, and it's going to be a struggle to see which one I leave out. I'm really hoping actually just one of them doesn't get the start midweek, and then that would make the decision easy. But I think all 4 of those are amazing options.
Ashley?
Yeah, Insigne was probably the first striker on my list. And then I definitely, after the beer chug, Cucho, just out of respect, he's earned a spot for me. And then I am leaning towards Chicho Arango for that last spot. I wanted to have a spiel just to mess with Blaine about how I thought you could give Bella a shout. I don't think you can. I don't think that this is the week to do that with him. But at Houston, home against Real Salt Lake, who, to be fair, Real Salt Lake at LAFC has a history of just like messing up their shit. But it's not tempting me away from it. I think that Arango is probably my third striker this week, and I am not even considering Bella for the first time in a while.
Blaine.
Vela's a rotation risk. I mean, I'll just take right from there.
Yeah, for sure.
Arango, the last double game week, Arango went both games. I think he subbed out a little bit early in both of them, but whatever. That's center forward. That happens. You go for something a little different late in the game. That's normal. You don't expect full 90s from all your center forwards all the time. But Vela didn't start one of the games, and
Yes, he didn't. It was when they traveled. Because
Yeah.
you and I played each other that week. I remember we both captained him.
yeah, and it's one of those that you can't trust Vela. Arango's the safer pick right here. I have Carranza in my draft right now. I'm toying with this one so much. Carranza would be my first drop, and it would be Arango coming in because it's Cucho and Insigne for my first two. But I'm really tempted to double up on that Philly back line. I didn't like all of the defender options this week, and I think doubling up on Philly is way too powerful. And so that means I would have to sacrifice Carranza at this point, and that scares me a little bit with the way they have been scoring. These matchups are so tempting. Carranza is maybe a goal a game type of guy, but he's got 2 games. Is that 2 goals? And he's had the potential to do more. I think the matchups are so good. Atlanta has not been playing well. I just don't know what to expect there. And then Red Bulls will be getting their guys back. But I mean, again, it's Red Bull who has given up multiple goals to a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of coming down to how much faith do I have in the Philly offense, which has always been not much. They've been putting up massive goal numbers against weaker defenses or heavily rotated teams like Colorado. And I mean, I think Colorado suffered an injury on the back line in the first 20 minutes. And then Abubakar, who came in for that injured player, went out at halftime. So that put that into perspective. Philly put 6 on a team that subbed a defender in and then subbed him out at halftime. Like there was something wrong there. And so I'm still, this is one of those big questions I think everybody has. How good is Philly's attack, or are they just absolutely destroying bad defenses when they get the opportunity?
So in the last 6 games Carranza started, he scored 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 goals.
Yeah.
One is the hat trick against DC, but those games are against at Orlando City, which is a cakewalk, home against Houston, at Cincinnati, home against Fire, at FC Dallas, and then obviously at DC United, and then home versus Colorado. So I mean, those are not, bad. That's pretty good. I mean, he's not playing bad teams and good matchups,
Yeah, I'm hoping for Carranza getting about 15, 2 goals on the double game week, and his minutes plus a couple of bonus points. 15, 16 would be great. My question is Arango better than that, and will I be better served grabbing a second Philly defender and upgrading or changing out Carranza for Arango? And I like having some of these discussions with the chat because this is what thought process everybody's kind of got to go through. It gives some insights in how we try to do this. Like, okay, LA versus RSL, that's a match where I think Arango can get 2. LA versus Houston, that's a match where I think he can get 2. So maybe he only gets 3, but 3 beats out any score Carranza gets. So it's one of those hard choices we have to make. And then Todd's got me thinking, do you double up on the Toronto attack? I mean, LA's not a good defense. It's double home. That's Galaxy. And then Montreal has been a pretty terrible defense that we've bet against a lot. Do you take both Bernadeschi and Insigne and hope that they both get on the score sheet? I mean, we jokingly discussed it last week. Maybe you throw both of them on the bench and see which one hits. Well, they got a 12 and a 13 together. I mean, that beat out Cucho, that beat out Carranza, that beat out a lot of other forwards. And those were 2 guys on the same team. So I think you could double up there. There's a lot there, but I think those are kind of your big 5, Bernadeschi, Insigne, Cucho, Arango, and Carranza. And I think Carranza might be the most expendable one there.
Tough decisions for sure. I have the same background or backbone as everybody else. Other names to throw out there. I've seen some of these in chat. I mean, a crazy one. Chicha over there at LA. He's had some decent little run of form lately. Worth taking a look at. Double game, probably not competing with those 5, but someone to at least glance at if you're looking for maybe one of Tyler's differentials right there. But I think you also have to talk about both Rudy and Kyoto. They've been in a little bit of run of form as well, double game weeks. So I think these are some on the well, I guess not. Kyoto's not on the cheaper end of that. Rudy
yeah.
is, but
And
other
Aruda's
just
playing
three.
a former team, which
Exactly.
he tends to do well.
Yeah. Word of warning: Kyoto doesn't normally start both games in a double game week. That's been the trend all season. Otherwise, I mean, he would have been a early inclusion in my list if he was a lock to start both. But he rarely starts both. He rotates.
I mean, you could say as a bench play though, if Kyoto is starting the Red Bull game, that's the one he's worth it for. You know.
The thing about Montreal is they're pretty much into the cup. The thing they have to be playing for is the chance to have a first round bye. So that could be the incentive of when you might see some of these teams play these players that might normally rest. But you're exactly right. I just think that's a name we want to mention as part of the thought process going forward. Okay, let's wrap. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I would just say, like, when talking about like Kyoto and we talked about Vela earlier, for anyone who, if you think that they are a risk of rest or as we discussed, yellow card, it's just this really is like one of the like biggest matchup double game weeks that you'll see. So there is extra downside for taking a risky player. You can always do that, especially if you're just trying to make up ground and you need to catch up. But there is extra risk by picking someone who will miss a game this week. It's a lot of times you can get away with that, and if they have one good game and one game where they get 1 point, you'll be fine. But I'm not sure about this week. I think it's going to take really high scores to keep up.
Now, Reed, before we go to captains, I have one question for the three of you and chat if they want to jump in, as we're talking about forwards. If Bo starts against Chicago, and assuming he's healthy, none of us talked about him, are you willing to risk him as a bench play, knowing that it's home to Chicago, followed up by a weekend home match to New York City, who is potentially dealing with some injuries?
He looked so haggard playing 45 minutes. If you watch that game, did you watch that game?
No, I didn't get to watch it.
He looked off. Now, he's fantastic, so that's not to say he'll start the next game and look on, but he did not look ready. He looked like a halftime sub because they were losing so badly. And he was just taking shots he had no business taking, and it wasn't very pretty. So that's a dicey bench play to me, even because he's not fully fit.
Yeah, I think it's just another one where if it was another week where there weren't so many matchups, that you could risk it because he could go off really big on one game. But yeah, I don't see any way he plays more than 45 minutes in both of the games.
Yeah.
He could get like a 60 and a 45 this week, and he could still do some damage, but you are risking a lot by picking him.
Mm-hmm.
Agree right there. He was actually one of the original ones I was looking at in my first draft of my team, so I did forget about him, and it's because of those reasons that both Todd and Ashley mentioned that I moved away from Bo. So finally, let's wrap things up with our captain picks. Blaine.
Who knows at this point? Probably Mukhtar with the double home game. He's a little more proven lately than Zella, and I think you just go with the obviously proven guy right now, and the double home is too big of an advantage.
A lot of people are on double homes, though. Ashley, who do you like?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I have an asterisk to change my mind, but my gut looking at these games was Zella. I know how Luke's been producing at home and stuff, but I really liked those two Columbus matchups. He has a tendency to go off after he has a little bit of a quiet slump. I mean, 5 is not terrible, right? But it's not great. So that was my gut pick, but then I looked at our spreadsheet here and everybody else said Mukhtar, so now I felt like my gut was off, but that might still be where it lands. Todd.
I'm going Mukhtar. I think it was just especially expected goal stats. He's such a huge involvement in Nashville and having 2 home matchups. But I mean, I think Zella Ryan's a very reasonable alternative, and I think Heel's a reasonable alternative too. I know he's been sloppy a little bit, but they have 2 home matchups. They have a lot to play for. He usually gets a lot of bonus points, even if he doesn't score. So, I mean, I think you have a lot of good captain options. One of the big midfielders is definitely the way to go, just because they most likely will have at least a good score, and hope you pick the best one.
Yeah, for me, I have it on Mukhtar, and it's because I do think Zella has some inconsistencies with, I mean, look at the Hell is Real last week, and so He has some more blips there. But I do want to see some of those lineups. I mean, Colorado's going to trot out their A team, and that's going to be definitely tougher for someone like Mukhtar. But I think Mukhtar and Zella are number 1 and 2. 3 for me would probably come into maybe Insigne right there with some struggles that LA has had on defense and just that big rivalry with Montreal. I think that's probably going to be a game with goals on both sides. So that could be he's in good form. So that could be another top contender right there. So interesting to see where people fall. Interesting.
Oh, that's a big milestone for Reed. Reed never captains forward, so
he's number 3. He's number 3.
But being willing to even throw a forward into
I don't even think you've ever said it.
That's probably true. I mean, I also have Hernandez on there, and again, he's had some inconsistencies right there. That Zella and Hernandez thing, kind of back and forth. I feel like sometimes they can be a little bit risky right now for a captain. I like the idea of having him in my team, but as captain, I'm not sure. But I do see Zella as that potential number 2. So there we go. Milestones, growth. Still never Barrios, but that's how it is. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Remember that this is a double game week where the teams are going to be playing on Wednesday, so be sure to have your teams lined up, locked in pretty much by Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or you're going to be having a really strange team for that round. So it's going to be a big one. We're winding down near the end of the season, so it's still fun, but we're still here with you. You should stay with us. And let's finish up everything with our plugs. Todd.
Yeah, so I never have much to plug, so I always just go back to the Discord chat. I think it's really as good of a fantasy resource as there is, especially like when it gets close to the game for real time, people looking at lineups, tossing things out there. Even if you just like read everything that people post, or if you post, ask questions, that is an amazing fantasy resource, and it helps a lot of the best players. Number 1 in the game right now, who's beating everyone by a mile, is active on there. So it's a really good spot.
Blaine.
Yeah, nothing from me this week.
Ashley.
Well, now I feel terrible because I also have nothing, and I was hoping to just be the only one because usually Blaine's got something, but no, nothing for me this week either.
That's totally fine. I will echo what Todd says about the Discord. It's a fantastic community, fantastic people, so please do check that out, mlsfantasyboss.com/Discord. Also head over to mlsfantasyboss.com proper to see the reshare of this podcast if you're looking for where to see it, and also Tyler's differential articles. It's always popular, and I worked in some of his stuff this week. It's fun to do that. So head over and check all of that out. But mostly keep sharing this podcast and keep being a member of our community. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us every week. And as always, good luck.